It is time for a new era in Syracuse, New York, because Dino Babers is out and Fran Brown, one of the best recruiters in the entire country, is taking his first head coaching job with the ACC squad in the Syracuse Orange. And this team has all the makings to be a sleeper team in the ACC. With a transfer coming in at quarterback, a lot of other talent coming back. Are the Syracuse Orange going to be for real in Fran Brown's first season? You're about to find out what I think here in this video. What's up, Tailgaters? Here on the booth with Tailgate Nate. Today, I want to welcome you to my channel and welcome you to prediction season. It's where I predict all 134 FBS level college football teams, and it means, guys, I'm predicting your favorite team. So why don't you go ahead, hit the subscribe button, and ring the bell? I mean, why wouldn't you? You want to know what I have to say about your favorite team. You'll get a notification when that video is uploaded if it hasn't already. I believe this is video number 50 in my road to predict all 134, and I just want to thank you guys for your support during prediction season so far. You have helped support my channel in more ways than you can even imagine, and if you would like to continue to support what I do here on YouTube, I encourage you, like, comment, share, watch my other videos, of course, subscribe. Literally any way you interact with the channel helps us support it, and I really appreciate all that you guys do. With all that being said, let's talk about some Syracuse Orange football in 2024. But before we do that, you got to know how I'm going to do it first. We're going to take a deep dive in talking about the Syracuse offense, talking about the defense, and at the end of the video, we'll go through the Orange football schedule, and we'll give it a game-by-game preview and prediction. But I do have a couple more things before we do start, because right over here are going to be the stats the team put up either offensively or defensively last season. And of course, dear viewer, for your viewing pleasure, right below the team's logo, I have put the team's coaching staff. So I will waste no more time. Let's dive on into talking about the Syracuse Orange. And of course, we are starting out with this offense. Garrett Schrader has been the quarterback over the past couple of years for this Orange team. And much like head coach Dino Babers, he has moved on from this program, not to the NFL, to my knowledge, not through the portal. He has simply run out of eligibility. He has graduated 1,686 yards, 13 touchdowns, and 6 interceptions last season, while being the team's second leading rusher. He definitely did not have as successful of a season that he had in 2022, where he threw for 2,600 yards, 17 touchdowns, and 7 interceptions, while having some pretty good rushing stats that season as well. So definitely was a little bit of a down play for Schrader last season, but nonetheless, you lose a pretty talented dual threat quarterback. However, you do get some pieces coming back into this room, such as Carlos Del Rio Wilson and Braden Davis, but your starting quarterback in 2024 is going to be none other than former Ohio State head man Kyle McCord. Last season for the Buckeyes had 3,170 yards, 24 touchdowns, and 6 interceptions. You could say the fans in Columbus were pretty rough on him, especially at times, and I think he is a much better quarterback than what a lot of people gave him credit for last season. Not really a true runner, so a big shift from a dual threat quarterback in Garrett Schrader to a guy who's more so going to sit in the pocket and look to throw. But Kyle McCord is a very talented player and definitely should give Syracuse some pretty darn good quarterback play in 2024. He does have a pretty good skill position room at quarterback, does McCord, or I should say with the Orange does McCord, so let's talk about it. Running back room, you do lose a couple guys to the transfer portal. Jawan Price and Ike Daniels have both found themselves home with new programs. Price has found North Texas, and Ike Daniels is going over to an FCS squad in Towson. You take a look at where they sat in terms of rushing leaders last year. Well, Price was the leader among those 47, or among those two, I should say, 47 carries for 166 yards. Ike Daniels had a 100-yard season last year, but they were more depth pieces than anything. So who do you get coming back? Well, that's going to belong to LaQuint Allen. He's a 1,000-yard rusher from last season that comes back in 2024, 1,064 yards to be exact, and 9 rushing touchdowns. I also expect him to see an uptick in yards per carry, where he only had 4.3 last year. He definitely could be a guy that could get 5 yards per carry. You do get a guy coming over from the transfer portal. Will Nixon is a Washington transfer with Kalen DeBoer going to Bama. Nixon has found himself a new program home, and that is here with the Syracuse Orange. He'll be a pretty good number 2 behind LaQuint Allen, and then some freshmen round out this room. Yazin Willis and Jaden Hart will both be, hopefully should get some carries here and there. Most of them will go to Allen, with a lot of them going to Nixon as well, but Willis and Hart, who knows? We could see one, if not both of those guys, play some pretty big minutes for Syracuse this season. Wide receiver room, only one notable loss that I could find, and that was to the likes of Damian Alford. He is going over to the Utah Utes, leading receiver from last season, 610 yards and 3 touchdowns last year, while being second on the team in catches with 33. So you do lose a pretty big part to that wide receiver room there. But other than that, pretty much every other pass catcher comes back because you see there are no notable losses in this tight end room, at least to me. So you do get Umari Hatcher back, Donovan Brown, Trevor Pena, and Daryl Gill all return to this wide receiver room. Jackson Meeks is coming in through the transfer portal as well as another guy in Zeed Haynes. I believe both of these guys are community college or JUCO transfers. I do believe that's the case. They also did get, oh no, sorry. My apologies. They are not community college JUCO transfers. I just had to scroll up a little bit farther. They are both coming over from Georgia. They just got lost in a very talented wide receiver, and they have followed Fran Brown over from Georgia to be wide receivers for this Syracuse program. And they also did get a guy over from Colorado State and Justice Ross Simmons. My apologies for the little brain fart there. But to clear everything up, Meeks and Haynes, both coming over from Georgia, both should see really good playing time in this wide receiver room. And you do get Oronde Gadsden back, who didn't play much last year, I believe, due to injury. But he's a very talented player. When he gets on the field, should be the lead tight end in 2024, while Dan Villari, who had some pass-catching duties, had some rushing duties last year, was the team's third leading rusher. He'll be back to be utilized as a great weapon in that tight end room. And with Christopher Blake gone through graduation and Joe Moore and Wes Howe, again, I'm probably mispronouncing that last name, I apologize, gone off the offensive line, those latter two guys due to the portal. Here's what your offensive line looks like in 2024. Enrique Cruz, Jayonre Reed, Kalen Ellis, David Wallabaugh, hopefully I'm pronouncing that last name right, and Joe Cruz are back on this team, while you do get Joshua Miller, Savion Washington, and Demetrius Weatherspoon, who are all coming in through the transfer portal. You could see guys like Miller, Washington, and Weatherspoon get starts on the offensive line, but combination of those, 8 guys right there should be your starting offensive line unit. Quarterback play is going to take a step up this year, and that's no slight to Garrett Schrader, but Kyle McCord is going to elevate that Syracuse passing number. If the rushing number can stay where it was from last year, maybe even improve, I have a feeling this is a team that's going to get better on third down. That yards per game number is going to increase, and I think this is the Syracuse offense that's going to be pretty darn good here in 2024. They'll be able to do a lot of good things offensively, will this Orange team. But now we got to talk about the defense for this team, and honestly, it was pretty solid last year, but had its moments where it kind of let the game get away from them at times, and it's part of the reason that Syracuse couldn't be as successful as they wanted to be last season. They did lose their fair share of talent. Let's talk about it. Defensive line, Caleb Okechukwu. He is a graduate gone off of this defensive line. 35 tackles with 4.5 sacks last season. That 4.5 sack yardage number was second on the team. You also do lose Kavon Darton as well. He has gone through the transfer portal, was the leading tackler, I should say second leading tackler, my apologies, among defensive linemen last year, 43 tackles. Oh, and he led the team in sacks last year with 5. So 2 pretty notable losses on the defensive line side, but you get pretty much everyone else back. Kevin Jabity, Braylon Ingraham, and Dennis Jaquez, however you pronounce that last name, they all 3 come back, while you load up on some really good defensive line transfers, most notably in that is going to be the Texas A&M transfer, Fadil Diggs. He's a guy that can kind of come off of the edge. Really good player. Dion Wilson comes over from New Mexico State. And you also do get Isaiah Hastings, who's an Alabama transfer. So some really talented defensive line transfers. Yes, I know there's an edge rusher that I didn't mention. I will mention him when we talk about the linebackers, but we got to talk about the losses first because they lost some really good players, most notably Stephon Thompson. He went over to be with Matt Rule's program and be with the Nebraska Cornhuskers. He had 51 tackles, a sack and a half last season. Very talented player. And Leon Lowery will also be leaving through the transfer portal, another very talented linebacker, right behind Thompson on the tackle leaderboard from last season. 46 tackles, 3.5 sacks. You tack on a pass defendant in there, you're losing 2 really good linebackers through the transfer portal. However, your leading tackler and Marlo Max, who had 108 tackles, 4 pass defended, 4 sacks, couple pass defended, throw a pick in there as well. Derek McDonald and Anwar Sparrow and Caden Bailey all come back, and this is where I want to mention the name of James Hurd. Now, a technical edge rusher as well. You could have put him in that defensive line room, but is going to play more of a true linebacker position, at least according to my depth chart site in ourlads.com. He's going to be a very talented player, was at West Virginia, and should play big minutes in this linebacker room, especially with Thompson and Lowery gone. Again, will be a guy that they use in the pass rush sets a lot, but going to play more of a true linebacker role, but is an edge rusher transferring in technically. Jeremiah Wilson is gone out of the cornerback room, as now we get to talk about the defensive backs. He is gone through the transfer portal. Had 16 tackles, 5 pass defended last year, was really a pretty solid player, but you do lose him out of that room. And in your safety room, hey, this is the team that always happens to have a really, really good safeties, and they're going to have good defensive backs again because, again, Fran Brown, defensive back coach at Georgia, your head coach now. Yeah, the dots pretty much connect themselves. Isaiah Johnson and Jason Simmons are both gone. Johnson was sort of that, player that you could really play anywhere on this defense, but he goes to the NFL as a safety. 59 tackles, 5 pass defended, and an interception for him last season. You also do get you also lose Jason Simmons, 42 tackles, 6 passes defended, and 2 interceptions. The 2 interceptions led the team last season. And Miles Farmer, a former Nebraska Cornhusker, he transferred over to Syracuse and now is transferring over to App State. 21 tackles for him last season. So when you talk about this cornerback room, I should say this defensive back room as a whole, starting with the cornerback room, you do get Jaden Bellamy and Greg Delaney back, but they kind of left some holes needing filled. So what do? They dive into the transfer portal, and they get some really solid players. Devin Grant is a safety coming over from Buffalo, but that will probably end up playing more corner than safety in 2024. Clarence Lewis comes in from Notre Dame, and Marcus Washington is coming over as well. He comes over from the Louisville Cardinals. You also do get Deuce Chestnut coming in, who again is a technical cornerback transfer, but he is coming over from LSU. I believe was with this Syracuse program before. Now that I'm thinking about it, he'll play more of a safety role, but you could obviously switch Devin Grant and Deuce Chestnut in their roles on the field. You get Justin Barron, Elijah Clark, and Jaden Gold back to the safety room, and kickers are people too, so let's show them some love. Jack Stonehouse comes back as the punter, and Brady Denneberg comes back as the kicker with no notable losses in the special teams room. When you talk about this defensive this defensive side as a whole, yes, they lose a lot of high-end talent, and a lot of talent that was very productive for them last season in pretty much every position grouping. You could argue there really aren't that big of losses in the cornerback room, but they did lose some good defensive backs from last season, some very high-end talent guys. Look, they did really well in the transfer portal, in my opinion. I thought they brought in some really good guys. They got a lot of nice talent coming back. I see these defensive numbers being able to improve for the Syracuse Orange in 2024, but now we got to predict their schedule. Here it is for the Orange. We're going to tell you how we're going to predict it. Any game at home will be underlined, while any game on the road is in italics. That's that slanted text. Any game you see in green is a game that I think the Orange are going to be able to win fairly easily, while any game in yellow will be a close competitive game, but I still think Syracuse is able to win, and red is any game that I have the Orange losing. It starts out with a win against the Ohio Bobcats. They've lost a ton of pieces over the past couple of seasons, and again, it's a lot of unproven talent that's on this team. Yes, there are some good returning pieces, but especially with the loss of C.A. Bangura through the transfer portal, couple other really nice pieces that leave that team. Ohio, I still think is going to be a solid team in the MAC, but not enough to contend with Syracuse. The Orange win in week 1 before they get a home game against Georgia Tech in week 2. Now, this is a matchup against 2 teams that I think are going to be very sneaky good in ACC play this season, but I do have the Syracuse Orange losing this game. Georgia Tech, if Haynes King can get those interception problems figured out, you really only lose Dominic Blaylock, and other than that, a lot of your skill position room comes back. There are some absolute dogs on the defensive side for Georgia Tech, and it just feels like a team, again, that gets better and better and better every single year. Syracuse, though, while Kyle McCord has shown some chemistry with these wide receivers early, I think the defense will take a little time to settle in, especially their transfers, and Georgia Tech will take advantage of that. They will win in week 2, although that really is a coin flip game for me. That one really could go either way, in my opinion. I think you win your next 3 if you're the Syracuse Orange. The Stanford Cardinal are just not going to be any good this season, at least in my opinion. Troy Taylor has got to show me that his group is ready to compete in the ACC. I don't really like a lot of the talent that Stanford has there compared to the competition that they have to play this season. Still some solid pieces here and there, and I think they can give Syracuse a pretty good fight, but the Orange pull away late and win that game, especially since that one is on a Friday in the Carrier Dome. And then I think they win that game against Holy Cross. Now, Holy Cross has been one of the better FCS teams for quite some time now. They did just lose their head coach, Bob Chesney. He has taken the James Madison job with Kurt Signetti off to the Indiana Hoosiers, and a lot of that talent does leave with him. Now, I still think Holy Cross is going to be a solid FCS team, not as good as they have been in the past. Syracuse wins that game with ease. And then there is a tricky game here. By the way, I don't know if I mentioned they do get a bye week, and that they let me start over. They get a bye week splitting that 4-game homestand that they have. So in between Georgia Tech and Stanford, they do have that bye week right there. You get a game against UNLV on the road, and do not count the Rebels out in this game, especially since it is on a weekday. It's on a Friday. It is on the road. UNLV is going to be a very competitive team out of the Mountain West this season, but they did lose Jaden Maeva. They do have some good pieces coming in through the portal, but I think Syracuse is going to be able to contend with UNLV in this game, and while it wouldn't surprise me if the Rebels won it, I do think the Orange will be able to come out on top. Again, very close game, and I really could see that one going either way, but I'm leaning 60% towards the Syracuse Orange. I think UNLV will be competitive. They got a lot of talent there that'll give this Orange team some fits, but I do think Syracuse comes out on top. So they starting out 4-1, really good start for Fran Brown, and I think things are going to start to get a lot trickier as you get into the second half of the schedule. But before that, you have to finish the first half with the NC State Wolfpack, and that is going to be a loss for me. Grayson McCall is coming in. Jordan Waters is coming in. A ton of wide receiver transfers are coming in, and we know what the defense is going to be under Dave Doran like it has every other season. They are really physical. They're really tough to run through, and NC State going to have a very good football team in 2024, especially with that being a road game. I don't think Syracuse wins. That'll be a loss for me for the Syracuse Orange. I also think they will lose to the Pittsburgh Panthers. Now, even though they have an extra week of preparation here, you often see teams struggle with these sort of middle of the week road games, and Pitt is not going to be any slouch of a team this year at all either. I think Pitt's still going to be a very competitive football team that is going to have their fair share of wins in 2024. And I see this being one of them. They've got a lot of really good pieces. And yes, while some talent offensively and defensively does leave, I think they supplemented themselves pretty well. The depth is going to show themselves. And so Syracuse will lose their second straight while they fall to 4-3. But nonetheless, you get a Virginia Tech team at home here in week 10. Now, you got to watch out for Virginia Tech this year. A lot of good defensive pieces, especially in that defensive back seven. Some very good talent. They were able to load up on transfers on both sides of the ball. And speaking of that offensively, well, you got some good transfers to come in, but a lot of returners come back. Kyron Drones at quarterback, Bashal Tootin at running back. Again, the plethora of transfers coming over to that team as well. Virginia Tech is going to look to make some noise in the ACC this year, and I think they do, but I think Syracuse is going to win one of these bigger games that they have. And I'm talking about NC State, I'm talking about Virginia Tech, and I'm talking about Miami, all of which project to be very good this season. I think they win at least one of them. They get the Hokies at home here in the Dome, a perfect spot to pull off an upset, because I think Virginia Tech really is going to be really good this season. I think Syracuse has all the necessary pieces, and Kyle McCord has played in big moments before, playing at Ohio State last season. That'll be a win for the Syracuse Orange, and I think they beat the Boston College Golden Eagles as well. Now, Boston College could be a team that's a little sneaky. Bill O'Brien is that head coach there, and they do have some good talent, but I think Syracuse outmatches Boston College in a lot of the position groupings, and while the Golden Eagles give them a fight, I think the Orange come out on top. However, I do have them losing this game on the road to Cal, and I think that this road trip for a lot of old-timey ACC schools, especially that are way over on the East Coast, like Miami, they have to go on the road and play at Cal. I have them winning that game regardless, but I think Syracuse, the travel gets them here, and not only that, Cal will be a sneaky team in 2024. Justin Wilcox has put together a very good side for 2024 that's going to win their fair share of football games this upcoming season. I really like Cal, and I think they get this win at home against the Syracuse Orange. You got 2 games at home to finish it off. I think you beat the UConn Huskies. That's a team that's lost a lot of production over the past couple of seasons, ever since they made a bowl game back in 2022. I like UConn this year in some matchups, just not in this one. I think Syracuse is going to be able to win that one. And to round out the season, could they beat the Miami Hurricanes? Sure, I think they're going to. Not that I think they're going to win. I think they're going to be able to put up a good fight. I misspoke there earlier. Miami is really talented this season. Miami has got a lot of great players coming in through the portal, such as Cameron Ward at quarterback, Damian Martinez at running back, Cormani McClain coming in at corner, a ton of defensive line transfers. On top of the returners with that team, some really good returners defensively. You get a 1,000-yard receiver in Xavier Restrepo coming back. even though this one is at home in the Dome and Syracuse can sneak up on Miami, I think the Hurricanes win that one. So it drops Syracuse to 7-5, but a very successful season for Fran Brown in his first year. I think Fran Brown, while the hire doesn't really the hire doesn't really raise any brows to me. I think he's put together a very talented squad. They've done some really nice things through the portal, and I think Syracuse will be a solid team in the ACC this year. But I want to know what you guys think in the comment section below. Remember to play hard but tailgate harder. We'll talk about another new head coach in the video later today with the Michigan State Spartans. Goodbye.